Hi, my friends. How are you today? I have such an amazing person on. Her name is Alexis Carpenter. I also had her on episode 14, way back when I started, almost a year ago. So I'm so glad to have you back, Alexis. And in that year's time, your title, your bio has changed because now you are Alexis Carpenter, author and coach. So,
Yeah.
oh my God, congratulations.
Thank you. It's so exciting. And I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, great. So you just wrote the book, Changing the Reflection, The Faces We Wear and the Truths They Hide. And
Yeah.
I will just tell you that I read two chapters and I'm like, oh, this is really good. I really need a time and a place to read this. So I carved out a Saturday morning. I sat down, had my dogs, my nice fluffy blanket on the couch. My family was gone. I read the whole thing, like the
Ah,
whole entire book. It was so amazing.
oh,
Um,
gosh.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, I love that.
I know that like I know you through a mutual friend, and ironically, we had never met each other before then, even though I know a lot of your friends. We live in the same area, like literally in the same small area. So when I was reading your book, I was like, oh, I know that street. Oh, I know that area. Oh, I know those people.
Yeah.
I even knew like some of the situations that this small town puts you in that aren't very good situations. So, um, yes, you were brave throughout your life. You were brave to write this book as well, I think.
Hmm.
What brought you to this point where you wanted to write this book?
Yeah. So I think in early 2022, it's ironic. So I had the calling that I wanted to write, and I just did a little dabbling, like some journaling, but didn't really like fully like embrace like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll just do some writing here and there. And then after Jordan passed away, it was the shock and the loss of him that was just like, wow, people aren't gonna know his story, and that, like, deeply bothered me, and, obviously, we get to thinking, and it's like, well, what happens, like, when I'm gone? Like, what will people remember? Will they remember the curated version of me, or will they remember the version of me that was, like, present and just who I genuinely am, like the goofball, like the loving person, like, or do they get the very professional put together curated version? And I didn't want that. I didn't want people to make up stories about me or um have have any reason to be like, oh, okay, well, I think this was the case. No, I just wanted to tell the world, and there's some really scary stories in there to share, and it was so raw and honest that I think I shocked myself, like, after writing it, and I'm like, "Am I really gonna, like, put this out there?" Um, but my gosh, what a feeling of freedom to, like, just be free from the things that caged me and just to be me, and so it's
Um,
such a scary but exciting place.
oh, yeah, yeah. I love what you're saying about stories. Twofold. One fold is that, like, I think about like my grandparents, and my grandparents love to tell stories. I remember their like back on the farm stories and their stories about their relatives and their histories. And it's so sad for me to think that I can't tell those stories now. Like I don't know all those stories by heart like they did. So a little piece of them goes away year after year. And you have made this like your story is going to live on. And your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids can be like, we come from this kick ass person. This is where we come from, somebody who came through all this and still showed up with a smile on her face and helped us out. So that's amazing. The
Oh,
second part is that, I'm a big believer that we're all here to share our stories. And when we do, it gives us the opportunity to learn and to grow from those stories. And I really think that's what this book is about for me. Like it really shows your hard times, your trauma times, and how you can get over it. And not just maybe get over it is a little too extreme, but like how you can still persevere, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Um, I know, I'm like, not maybe not get over it because it's still there, but it is, like,
Yeah.
really getting through it. It's, like, allowing that to be the past and to be like, "Okay, I closed that door." Like, I've gone through that, I've experienced it, I've healed from it, and now I get to move forward and just knowing that I conquered all of the tales that were in there, you know? So it's just
Yeah.
yeah, I did, I persevered, and it's amazing to think about us as individuals and how strong we can come out if we're willing to
Yeah.
face it, and sometimes we just need a little push and sometimes we don't have a choice. So
Yeah, and being true to ourselves too, right? Like there's a lot of stuff in this book that maybe you would have skipped over or glossed over, but you said this is my story. And I think there's so many people out there that can relate to parts, if not all of your story. And if we just skipped or glossed over all our stories, we would feel so alone in this world. And so feeling not alone in this world, are there certain people that helped you or push you to write this book?
Yeah, well, I did definitely have accountability because there were so many times when I was like, nope, I throw in the towel. I don't want to do this anymore. But Lauren Eckhart, she was actually the one who published it. It was her company, Burning Soul Press. But she became a really great friend. And so she was my coach. And so every week we would meet. And we had like our little SAJ group that met. There were like four of us. And it was really great. It was great because there was somebody ahead of me, so she was actually publishing. And then there was me who was like, the draft was done and I was getting into that phase. And then we had somebody come in and she was like just starting. So it was really
Nice.
incredible to see that. But then it was like we would read pieces of our stuff. So it'd be like, you have to show up with 1,000 words or, 2,000 words. And like we'd set goals. And so without that, I don't think I would have been able to actually hold myself accountable, especially with some of the harder stories. Cause I'm like, no, this is not good. Like nobody's gonna want to read it. I was like, my life is so dark, like, but it really was every time I would bring a piece and I would hear what they took from it, I was just like, "Ugh, how wrong of me would it be to not share these stories? How, like, even if one person in this world, like one person, if it can help them and allow them to know that they too can have the strength and that there are people there for them, it would all be worth it. Even
Yeah.
even if somebody bought it and threw it in the trash because they're like, "Nope, somebody took it out of the trash and it helped that one person." I don't care. Like, I just think there's something so beautiful about the way that we can share our words and our stories and allow our openness to help heal somebody else. And the messages that I've gotten, like, have brought me to tears, and it's incredible to know that the decision I made to write it has impacted more people than I ever thought it would. So I'm like, oh, I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's gorgeous.
Mhm.
Um, so as I'm reading this, I related to the teenage years of your life, I think. And maybe it's because we came from the same rural area and not having a lot to do in this area, maybe. So there's choices and things that were kind of pushed upon us that maybe
Yeah.
they aren't in other areas. I'm not really sure, but I found myself in a lot of your stories through your teenager years and saying, yeah, yeah, I dated that guy. And yeah, I really held myself back because of this person. And yes, I thought so little of myself during this situation. I can see other teenage girls reading this book and gaining so much of it from it. I'm going to put you on the spot. So, if you had some words of advice for these girls, these teenage girls that are just trying to make it in the world today, what is something that you would tell
Oh, okay.
them?
Well, first,
No pressure.
I'm like, it's such a great question. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hold all of them.
Mhm,
I would say that in the moment it feels like the world's gonna end and there's no option or opportunity and there's nobody to turn to.
mhm,
But just remembering that there's always somebody and there are a plethora of resources out there. And now with the internet, like we really do have access to everything.
mhm,
Um, and I think that, thinking about before, it was like you maybe saw a flyer where you could rip a tab off, but like we didn't have all of these resources. So utilize that, get into communities. And even if it's like you don't have a big friend group, there are so many different support groups that you can go to and that you can find. And there's probably something for every situation. And I think surrounding yourself with people who have experienced things like you and not hiding from it because you are not a problem. You are not your circumstance. That is something that happened to you in your life that you can either face it now or you can face it later when it does come back up because I assure you, I promise you, it will come back up at some point and I think in the moment going to be easier to address it and face it then versus all of the things and I say the hurricane it creates as you
Mm,
move through life because it keeps coming up and you don't really realize why.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, because of social media, so many girls and teenagers nowadays are looking at their reflection all the time. Like they're always looking and they're taking pictures and um sharing things that aren't nice. Like bullying back in our day was harsh and nowadays it's devastating, right? Like it just can be everywhere. And thinking about like being that age and all the self insecurities that you have and looking in that mirror, learning how to change that reflection. Are there some practices or maybe some habits that you would like to share that might help that person, whether teenager or at our age? Because, like you said, we learn these lessons over and over again for sure. They keep coming back. So, do you have any tips or tools that you use in your life?
Yeah, well, I have recently integrated the mirror method,
Mhm.
which is where you stand in the mirror for 5 minutes. And sounds so crazy. I've actually not said, I don't think I've said this out loud, but so you stand in your birthday suit, we'll say it that way, right? Censored.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything nice to say, you just have to look at yourself. And the point is that you don't look away from yourself because we tend to, especially as women, we'll look in the mirror and we'll pick out at least 10 flaws immediately and then we'll look away. So
Mhm.
instead of looking away, and if you can't pick out something that you're like, oh, I love my eyes, I love my cheekbones, I love my hair. If you can't find that, then just look at yourself. And one thing I will say, if you can't say beautiful things to yourself, imagine writing all of the things that you say that are terrible. So, I'm ugly, I'm not smart enough, I'm this, I'm that. If you wrote all of those things down and then your best friend was standing in front of you and you had to say, not I am, but you are ugly, you're not smart enough, we would never do that because
Mhm.
that would hurt somebody so much. And so if you think about your reflection as your best friend and not you, until you can actually associate the reflection with yourself. Imagine that person you're looking at is another person and you're telling them how ugly they are, how not smart they are, and all of those things. And it's really going to change the perspective. We actually did this at Powerhouse in 2022, and we had to say it to somebody else. And I had no idea who this person was. And it was the most devastating thing I've ever done to say such unkind things to somebody. And I realized, like, I say these things to myself every day. And so if we can really start to change the way that we look at ourselves, the way that we speak to ourselves, and if you can't say anything nice, it's like the old saying, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Just look at yourself and appreciate it. Appreciate the breath that you get to take. Appreciate the smile that you get to have on your face. Appreciate, the way your body feels. Appreciate the way I can't even think of any more, but it's just like if you allow yourself to be so present in your body and just appreciate the things that you do have, because there are things that some people don't have, like if you can stand and look in a mirror, not everybody gets to stand and look in a mirror. If you can brush your teeth, not everybody gets to brush their teeth. It's like those little minute things that we don't think about that we take for granted. When we start showing gratitude, that's my next thing is
Yeah.
every day, if you can find little things to be grateful for, it doesn't have to be yourself specifically. It could be for the sunrise. It could be for the breath you got to take. It could be for the coffee that you got to drink, the tea that you got to drink, the friend that you got to chat with on the phone, the person that you walked by on the street and they said hi and smiled at you and how good that made you feel and how good it made them feel. Holding the door for somebody. Find things that you can be grateful for. Something that I've been doing is 10 gratitudes a day. And if you do 10 gratitudes a day for 30 days, that's 300 things in your life that you are grateful for.
Mhm.
And if you do it for a year, that is 3,650 things you're grateful for. So those little shifts, like it doesn't seem like much, but when you think like, oh my gosh, at the end of the year, 3,650, that's a lot. So if we take little incremental steps, something that could take you 5 minutes, a minute, whatever, it will literally change your life. And like I know this because this is my life. This is what I've done. And again, if you read the book, you'll know quite a few things that I've had to overcome, and it really was that, and just holding on to hope, and, finding that one person to be kind to, or, somebody gave me a little bit of kindness. So,
Definitely. Oh, that's such good advice for everyone, those things. I try to practice those myself, and they
mm,
are game changers. They're things that I wish I had when I was that teenage girl. Things I wish there was books out that I read that were from you. I wish there were stories out there from people like us when I was that age. I know that when you are a teenager and you're going through things, it's hard to see outside of there. You don't have those long term, that long range look yet. But
yeah.
if you could be able to read these, you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not alone. I'm going through some of the same things that everybody else is going through." And I think that's really important for teenagers. So if it's okay with you, I am bringing this to school because I teach high school. So I'm
Yeah.
going to bring it to school, and if people want to read it, they can because it was
Yeah.
very powerful. It was really good.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I would
Yeah.
love that. I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me feel really great. Yeah.
Good. So what now? Now you have done this book and you have book studies going on, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So we have the book club, and that is just once a week for 5 weeks.
Mhm.
And it'll just keep shifting. Like December, there likely won't be one. And then it'll start back up in January. And so yeah, we'll do it like maybe once a quarter, so 4 times a year. And we
Yeah.
will read this book that, obviously changing the reflection. And the hope is that people come with questions, and I get to give them advice, or help guide them on their journey, because, it is, I think it is really just one person seeing you, right? It's about feeling seen, heard, and like a place that you actually belong. And I want that to be that place. I want that to be where you can come in fully open and exposed, and and like there's questions that I give, and the questions I give aren't necessarily like, I don't want you to think about me. I want you to think about you. So it's kind of like, where are areas in your life that you feel like you could be changing the reflection. And, maybe you're like, I really want to change this, but how do I do that? And maybe that's the question you show up with. And then I can give you advice on, here's a couple of things that you can just try to implement in your life that could really change. Um, so yeah, so there's the book club, and yeah, and then the breakthrough challenge, which again is just helping people get their first breakthrough. Because once you get one, it's so much easier to get another and another and another. So that's the goal, is to help people heal, because we could all use a little healing in our life.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the shift for your book study is that you are actually putting it back on them and like where can we grow and what can we do? And I've seen you do that over and over again in the business world, in the corporation world, where you're trying to make workplaces better. You're trying to make the community of the workplace better. And now you're bringing this right into our homes and into our lives, where you're trying to make our workplaces, I mean, our homes and our communities around us better. Um, you grew up in this community, you wrote about this community. How are you feeling? And now you have kids in this community. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna throw it out there like, how are you feeling? And do you have any like suggestions if you come from a community that can be challenging, how to grow up and live in that community?
Yeah. I have so many feels. I love it here, because it's home, right? Like, there's an essence about this Vermont, and on the other hand, I feel suffocated sometimes, and would like to not be here anymore. But I see it with my kids, and it is I feel like one of those places where, if you know people, then you're better off, like there's more of a click, and it honestly reminds me of high school. And I think that, if you live in a place like that, it's not seeking the people, thinking, I think of popularity. Like, when we think of the circles that we want to be in, we always want to be in the circle with like the bright shiny star, like, like, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, I want to be friends with the people that are very genuine, and I don't have to feel like I have to curate myself around. Like, you are one of those people. I absolutely love every time we connect. I love all of our conversations, and that is because you're a genuine person, like you lead with your heart, you show up with your heart, you care for people. And those are the circles that I want to be in. And, maybe that's the circle that you want to be in. But what I would say is whatever circle you decide that you want to be in, whoever you want to connect with, ask yourself why you want to connect with them.
Mm,
Is it a valid reason, or is it because you feel like you're supposed to be connected with these people? Something I've really been doing lately is like asking myself every time I'm like, oh, I want that.
mm,
Why do we want that? Is that trying to fulfill something that's internal that thing's not going to fulfill? Or is it because I'm trying to hide from something? Like, why do I actually want this? And is it something that I need? Or is it going to, like just truly make me happy? And I think when we really start to ask those questions, like, what is this relationship going to bring? How can I bring them value? How can they bring me value? Do I have to change when I'm around them? Am I safe when I'm around them? Because again, depending on what circles you're in, especially thinking about young girls, even young boys, like putting themselves in dangerous situations because they just want to fit in. And believe me, there's stories of this, like because I did that too. And we don't have to say yes. And we do have a voice. And I think for so long, especially in like our generation, we as kids were quieted, right? Like it was to be seen and not heard. And so it was almost this feeling of like I was never validated. I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a choice in my decisions, although of course you do, right? We all have a choice, but it's in that moment that you feel like you don't. But if you just were courageous enough, right? Like we talk about the arena, like sometimes we have to get in and we have to be the one to change the circumstance. We have to be the one to change the environment. So you can be that friend that says, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, this is dangerous. This isn't the place for me. And I suggest none of you do that because, like, we have to remember my son was 20 years old and he was on a motorcycle and somebody hit him. We can never dictate what's going to happen ever. And if we live each moment intentionally and with purpose, it changes everything, the way that you show up every single day. And I think if we did that a little bit more, life would just be so much richer in everything, time, presence, love, all of it.
yeah. Yeah. Um, that brings up a couple things for me. One is you said we have a voice, and I want
Mhm.
to come back to that in a couple different ways. But you said, we all have a voice, and I think that is so important to remind our youngsters all the way up to how we still are. There's a lot of women that I know right now that don't remember that they have the voice. And to go along with that, the boundaries. And I think boundaries sometimes can be thought of like, well, I have a boundary where you can't cross this line. But really, the boundary is about us, right? Like, this doesn't feel good to me. Let me use my voice. This isn't safe for me. Let me use my voice. And again, then going out and being able to seek and help for like seek out the people to help you with those boundaries and to get you there. So I like the lessons, they just transcend time through this book for sure. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Uh,
Nice.
yeah. Oh my gosh, boundaries. And it's crazy to think about. Like even I think there were boundaries at some point in the book, but it's like I didn't intentionally do any of those. And
Mhm.
I think I put the boundaries on me. It was the boundary of like you need to be quiet. You just need to show up. You need to always give value to people. You just need to, please everybody else and like there's no room for you or your emotions. Um
Yeah.
And if I could go back, if I could, hug and love on that little girl, I would tell her, you do have a voice. You might understand it in a way of like the punishment doesn't seem worth it, but at the end of the day, your safety comes in
Mm,
that. Like I'm only safe within myself, right? Like we're all only safe within ourselves. Like us as parents, we can only create environments that, our children can show up and feel protected and safe, but there's no way that I can truly protect them. Only they can protect them. So like helping them understand their intuition and like when something doesn't feel good in your stomach and you're like, I feel like this is wrong, listening to that. Don't just blow it off like, oh no, I think that's probably fine. Like when you have that, listen to that because that could be the thing that changes the rest of your life, that one decision.
yeah. Wow. Okay. So I have to go back and have more conversations with my teenage daughters about intuition. You're
Yeah.
definitely right. Because that is so important. Those feelings that we just tend to shove back down and they're there for a reason. Yeah. Yeah. So just in a couple of years that I have known you and you have been writing this book, you've been through so much, and I don't need you to rehash that or explain it if you don't want to, but you have been through so much in this book. And just in the couple of years that I have known you, um, your your bravery just transcends for sure. When you look in your reflection now, you say change the reflection. Now, when you look in, what does your reflection say to you? What does it look like?
Ah, well, I think on it changes every day, but
Yeah.
on the majority of the time, strength comes up.
Yeah.
Like, you're such a beautiful warrior. You show up so bravely, even when I don't want to. And there are times that, of course, fear overcomes and I don't. And there are times I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, not today,
Mhm.
but it's about, I think even for that, it's like, just giving yourself grace. Like, we're not perfect. It's not going to be great every single day, but I think strength comes up quite often. Like, wow, we're really strong. Like, we're standing again today. Even after all of that, even after all of the losses in the last couple of years, even after, like feeling so broken down and like, it's sometimes it's like you really just you've got a thread holding you up. And when we can get up and endure that and look at ourselves and still say, I love you. Like, I'm still going to protect you. I'm still here for you. And we might not be fully strong. We might not have full armor on, like maybe we got half on today. But just the fact that we're showing up, that is so much strength. That's resilience, right? When you hit the ground and you think you can't get back up again and you literally have nothing left in you to even to get you up, but you do it anyway. That is true resilience. And I even have to say that I think young kids do a lot of that every single day with the judgments that they feel, the criticism that they get. There's so much in this world that could knock us down, but the fact that we all tend to get back up, and if we can just keep getting up one more time,
Mm,
it's beautiful.
yeah. Well, as I am sitting here looking at your reflection, I definitely absolutely see a beautiful, brave warrior. So I think that is great. And I almost think that, like, if people can start getting a phrase like that in their head, that's something that maybe they could do when they look in the mirror. And
Oh,
if they just look in the mirror and say that phrase every day, it can be ingrained on who they are. So maybe I will steal yours for a little while and be like, I am a beautiful, brave warrior. Um, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yes,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah. You know, I know I've had a lot of issues with, like, feeling worthy, so that's what I've been doing lately is, like, looking in the mirror and saying, "I am worthy," and like, something in your brain physically shifts, the neurons physically shift when you start saying that to you, so, definitely, steal that from us. Go out there, look in the mirror, and start calling yourself beautiful and wise and intelligent and brave and all the good things, and you will eventually feel it, definitely.
Oh, it's so true. Our words are powerful. So powerful.
Very powerful. Um What is something that you do? I know you do so many things, but if you could share one more thing about how you nurture yourself every day.
Okay. Well, I get up at 3 a.m.
Oh
and
my God.
I have, yeah, I have alone time. So I exercise when I first wake up and then I drink my coffee by myself. And sometimes I journal, sometimes I read, and sometimes I just lay on the yoga mat and do absolutely nothing because the
Yeah.
house is so peaceful and quiet. And that is my favorite time of day.
That nice, quiet, alone time. Yeah. Nice. I know, because you have two boys, so you're busy, busy all the time.
Yeah. Plus my
I know
husband,
that's
he's like the
yeah.
biggest kid.
I hear that. I hear that. Well, there is just a little part of your book that I want to read. Um,
Yeah.
because in the beginning and the end, you are writing a letter.
Yeah.
And at this one point, you say, one more thing. When I fully find my voice, I hope it's everything you plan for it to be. And I have to say, I think you have found your voice. I think there's no way it can't be what he wanted it to be because this was just such a rich, powerful book. So thank you so much for writing this and sharing it with the world. It was definitely, it was brave and courageous. And so I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that literally means the world. Yeah, honestly, I'm like, I will just listen to this over and over and over when I forget that this is the impact, right? Because
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty powerful. I wasn't even sure how people would receive the two letters, but yeah, I just honestly I couldn't do it without Big G. So
Yeah, right? Did you write journals before this? Did you, like, journal a lot before this, or
not really. Like I like was off and on. Like I would sometimes pull up a Google Doc and I would write things. I loved creative writing. Honestly, I thought I'd write a fiction book and never a nonfiction book.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and here we are. We've birthed a true
Does
memoir.
it help you feel, like, lighter by an or, like, how do you feel after writing it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So during the writing process, I think when you do your first draft, it's so therapeutic. So like I would turn on instrumental music and I would close my eyes and I would just the craziest experience because like I would close my eyes and I wouldn't be thinking of what I was going to write. I would just listen to the rhythm of the music and literally my fingers would just type.
Mhm.
And it was almost like I would see it, like I would go back to that 7-year-old girl, like the salon story in there where I'm talking about my experience. Like my mom had surgery. I go to the salon and, I tell her just 2 inches off my hair and I watch them brush my hair out and it's poofing out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be bad. And I could feel myself there. I could remember, like my body even shook a little as I wrote it. But after that, like the release that my body got to experience in that moment, it was almost as if I got to redo it. And the words that I wrote, even acknowledging like yet again, I let myself down. I didn't, stand up for myself. But acknowledging that I do have a voice and I do have a choice now. I have the option to speak for myself now and using it every time that I can was such a beautiful realization, but it was yeah, I don't the whole experience was just very therapeutic and I'm like I recommend everybody write a book or write stories about their life, especially if like they were traumatic things. It could be something that you burn, it could be something like you never share with anybody but yourself, but like that release, there's something different when you speak it and there's something different when you write it. Like I've talked about this in therapy, but the release that I got with writing this out and actually remembering all of the details and like being present with that version of me, it was just probably the most profound. It was difficult at times. It was, you're exhausted after. Like I could only write one story at a time and then I would have to be like, okay, we're good. Um, but yeah, it was so beautiful. It really was. It was hard. It was painful. It was beautiful. I cried, I laughed, and I got angry, and I allowed myself to express every emotion that I needed to express. And the release that your body gets to feel after that is just so incredible.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so that's some really good advice too. I'm telling you, this is packed full of advice that people can take for sure. Yeah, I can imagine that writing that stuff out and feeling it in your body and releasing it. That's
Yeah.
powerful for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Alexis, thank you so much for being on my podcast again. And
Yeah.
thank you for writing this book. It's always so special to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, this was great. Every time I talk to you, it's just amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for all of you out there, thank you for listening. Please, share this with a friend. There's so many good things in this podcast. Go share this with a friend. And remember to choose yourself. And we love you. I will talk to you next week.
Bye, friends.